I'm Susan Weeks. I'm the IRB administrator, and I thank you very much for having me come out here and talk to you about this. We're really trying to get the word out on the campuses about IRB and about the process, which is not that difficult, and which we're hoping to really promote research. We like to do that, promote research, and help you be sure that it's really ethical research and concerned with all the issues that we need to look at. As you can imagine, today privacy is a very important issue, and that's one of the key issues that IRBs look at. We have a new privacy statute in the country every few years. There's a lot of linkable data sets and identification tools, and so when we ask what I think seem to be a lot of picky little questions, it's partially because we really don't want, no matter what it is, your opinion about something or your, history of crime on campus or whatever, we want the person's privacy to be protected, whatever information they're giving you. That's really important. And I have this example here. With a birthday, sex, and your zip code, you can identify 87% of the U.S. population. And so here's a medical record, here's voter registration data, and so if you look here, you know that person's zip code and their age, and then over here is the same person, a 29-year-old female, and my circles aren't quite right, but you can find out that she had ovarian cancer from having voter registration data if you had the medical record. And so that's nobody's business, of course. So we're trying to be really careful with all the data we collect, ask you how you collect it, where you store it, what you're going to do with it. And I remember long ago when I filled mine out, it was like, so you really care? It's in a locked file cabinet in what kind of office, and are you going to burn it after 3 years or whatever? Yeah, it matters. I mean, it sounds almost silly, but it does matter. So we will ask those kinds of things. Our IRB members, we have one on every campus, and I had forgot to make a copy of the list. But what the legalities are, you have to have at least 5 members. They have to be men and women of varied backgrounds and experience. And we do have that. Here we have a good blend. We have a good blend of scientists, non-scientists, community members, an ethics specialist, 2 math specialists, so that when a protocol comes in, then we can ask a person who will have some background on that protocol, and it's good to do that, as well as have people that don't, so that they're really fresh eyes on it. So it's good to have both. We can use a consultant as needed. We haven't done that. I mean, we're not a big hospital might do that, or a big university or something, but we're not that big. We haven't used well, not in I've been doing it almost a year. We are registered with the Office of Human Research Protection, and run by Health and Human Services, a government agency. And so these are the things that they do: provide leadership and give us our guidance, but they also maintain oversight. And so every year or so we have to go in and fill out the paperwork and keep all of our things up to date and tell them all the new board members. And if there were to be a problem, if somebody were to come back and say, I was in this research project and I was harmed psychologically or physically, then we have to report it. So it's important. That's one reason we're really trying to get the word out, because just in case that would happen, it is somewhat of a liability. Well, it is. It's not somewhat. It's a liability for the campus. This is the growth in the protocols from 2008 to now. So far this year, we've had 44, I think. And with the growth in the honors program, we're expecting kind of a bunch more this year, because they do want that to be part of the honors program, is for the honors students to do, to learn about IRB and to do some research that would require IRBs. In the past, that's why we have IRBs, because of things like Mengele's experiments in World War II, where he was experimenting on people, and as you see, how long will it take for this person to die when they're submerged in a tub of ice water? And that's not research, but that's what they said. And so it was after things like this, and then also our own government, the U.S. Public Health Service, if you've ever heard of the Tuskegee syphilis study that went on for a long time and was not stopped until the 70s, where people were not informed of their disease, denied treatment even after that came out, all in the name of research. And so people are, that began people thinking how we needed to regulate this. This is just, I don't know if you've heard of Milgram's experiment, but the idea here is that you can have, it can be social science research, not the kind of brutal research that we saw before, but in the Milgram experiment, it took place at Stanford University, and they tricked people, they tricked the learners who were coming in, who were the subjects of the experiment, into thinking they were shocking and hurting people, and at the same time, they saying, you must do this. The experiment requires that you continue, and they forced them, in essence, by using the authority figure of being at Stanford University and being in a white lab coat and saying, don't worry, we take all responsibility. They weren't really shocking people, but they thought they were. And so there were a lot of repercussions after this experiment about, did we psychologically harm the people that did this? And as it turned out, they did do a lot of studies, and they didn't, most of the people said that they did not, that they were not harmed. And we learned something very fascinating, which was that 60% of people or so will actually go all the way to the limit. If you tell them that they don't have any responsibility for it, they actually did it. And they redid this experiment with men and women in different ages in different countries, and the results were similar all over the world. So we did learn something maybe useful about clearly kind of going back to the Nazi, why did the Nazis do what they did, where we're kind of looking at the same psychological issues in all people, but there were some people who felt harmed by taking part in this, who maybe didn't want to know that about themselves. And so that's why we look at social science research also. And so then in response, in 1974, the Commission for the Protection of Human Subjects was created, and institutional review boards were created, so that we now look at all research. At first it was just research that was government funded, but now it's all research. Any kind of research, it's not, most of the research the IRB sees isn't funded at all. But we still have to do this so that we just are sure that everybody's protected. And then they put out the Belmont report, and what this did was talk about, can I walk? I feel like I'm supposed to walk over here. I'm going to walk over here. What the Belmont report said was that you need to look at three main things: autonomy, beneficence, and justice. And so every research study, what the IRB does is looks at, did everybody have a chance to say no, particularly? Were they respected in their, did you ask them in a respectful way that wasn't coercive? Did they have an opportunity to make their own decision? You didn't say, okay, give me your answer in 5 minutes, whether you're going to do this research or you won't get a kidney or something. You know, you really have to give them a real choice. That you do research that is beneficial to everybody. You protect the participants from harm. This, of course, is particularly interesting when you're, important when you're talking about research that deals with medical issues, serious medical issues in hospital and things. But still, we want to know that your research is going to be as beneficial to the person as possible and to society as possible. And then justice. This kind of goes back to the Tuskegee experiment. You don't choose participants just because they're too poor or they haven't had a lot of education to understand what it is you're asking them about. And so whenever you choose your subjects, then you need to think about that sort of thing. And so some issues are things like if you're using your own students. If you want to do research on your own students, you need to give them a chance to say no. You need to give them a chance to opt out of it. It doesn't mean that you can't do it as part of the class, but then they have to have another option if they don't want to be in your research project. And this is one thing we do sometimes have issues with faculty, because if they're going to do it anyway, I mean, it's not that you can't do it, but you have to let them say, no, I don't want you to use my grade, if that's what they feel like. So there's a lot of complicated small issues that go into trying to figure out if the IRB is in compliance. So it has to be research and it has to be human subjects, or it doesn't count. If you're doing research that is just, you're doing a literature review or something, then that's not an issue. If it's not, that's about the human subjects part. They have to be living, and that's about a living person. And you obtain data by talking to the person or by obtaining identifiable private information. Either one of those, any way that you get the research about the human subjects, unless it's just public data files, then that needs IRB approval. Research, it needs to be a systematic investigation. And so it's not, if you were doing it for yourself in your classroom, for your own good, I mean, for your own teaching betterment or that of your department, then that's fine. But if you're doing it, if you're presenting it to other teachers and presenting the results at conferences and publishing them, then you need to go through us. So some examples where data, it's not considered research and doesn't need IRB approval. Your dean asks you to do something for educational planning purposes. That doesn't need to go through us. It's quality improvement within the classroom, within the department. It's needs assessment about what courses do we need to teach, things like that. That's not IRB and does not need to go through us. Data collected by students for in-class purposes only that will not be shared with, not be given, go to a conference, go to the honors program that they have in April. That sort of, if it's just in-class use only, then it doesn't need to go through us. One of the things that does sometimes get complicated is that people feel like I already have this information and so I can use it. But technically, even if it's your students or somebody that's teaching next door, you have to be careful about how you use personally identifiable information. So it's a human subject and it's personally identifiable information if it's their name, their grades, their opinions, and it's only about living people. So if you're doing research on people who are deceased, then that's not going to need IRB protection because it's nobody to protect. A clear thing that if we take the Belmont principles and we apply them, autonomy, we're going to look very closely at your informed consent form, and there is on the website, there's a sample, a template actually, not a sample, a template for the informed consent form. Is it written in language the person can understand? Is there no coercion? And sometimes coercion can be offering too big a reward, and that's another thing we sometimes have to say. If you were to offer $200 to a student to do your survey, then that's probably too much. I don't know about your students, but it might be considered overkill, and so that would be really not as voluntary as it would be if you said, okay, we just want you, we're going to give you $5 Starbucks card for doing this. But so that what you offer them, if you offer them something, it has to be in the ballpark. There can be no repercussions, so that say, if you're studying your own students, and you wanted to do a survey and it's not literally part of the class, you should leave the room, let somebody else give them the survey, and then you come back in. So particularly say if you said you can do the survey or not, it's up to you, and you don't leave the room, then you can see who did it. And so sometimes those little things are the things that we pick up on. And special populations, children are a special population, prisoners are a separate population, and by children we mean under age 18. So if you're doing research with freshmen here or dual credit students or something, then if they're under 18, then there's another level of security that comes in that we have to look at, and you might need to get parental consent for that. Because I know a lot of people go down into the high school instead of the high schoolers. The beneficence part is the risks for the people that you're studying. You have to think, is it likely that would happen, and how bad is it if it would happen? So it isn't, if something bad could happen, but it's very, 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 very unlikely, then that's almost the same as if there's a really good likelihood that something really minor, like they'll have to lose 15 minutes filling out your survey. So we weigh those things also. The risks and benefits to the person, and is it likely that something will happen? And so I think you can see with all these little things that we try to measure, we really are, honestly, you just sometimes get different views from different IRB members, and you sometimes get different views from different IRB boards. I mean, it's kind of like you put in your dissertation and everybody on your committee has a different way of saying, this is good, no, I like that, no, I hate this part, would you change this part? It's a little bit like that. We try our best to be consistent, but there's a lot of things to juggle with what we're looking at. So I kind of talked about this, is you don't just use the easiest thing to hand. You try to be easy population to hand. You try to look at who are you taking your research in, saying that it represents. Who does it represent? That's who you need to use. So you need to get approval from us before you do your research. And here, this is kind of getting into our process now. The principal investigator and a student, if you're doing it with a student, needs to go through the Protection of Human Subjects training on the NIH website. And there it is. It takes 3 to 4 hours. And they give you, it's an online class, and then they give you a certificate and you email it to us. Everything, we do just about everything by email. Then there's the application that you need to fill out. And all the little boxes, try to check all the boxes, because whether or not it's a dissertation, or whether or not you're doing it with students, or whether or not you're a faculty at LSC, or whether you're a student at Sam Houston, those kind of things, we need to know all those things. Some of the attachments you will need to say, you need to create an informed consent form that will change depending on your population. Sometimes, if the informed consent form is the only thing that links the person to the study, like you're looking for the opinions of students in general, and so you want to talk to 100 students and find out what they generally think, but you don't care if this person it's not necessary to you to know who it is, then you can sometimes not put a name on the informed consent form, but you have to ask for special permission for that. But if it's really low risk and there's no, and that's the only way to connect the person because you don't have any other personally identifiable data, then sometimes you can leave the name off. Conflicts of interest, if you own a company that's doing research here or something, you need to tell us. We now have somebody that's going to study I write grants half-time, and somebody wants to study the grants department, so I had to say I have a conflict of interest, and so I can't look at this IRB. Somebody else has to do that. Somebody else has to look at this protocol. Then we would like a copy of your survey and your questionnaire so that we can see that the questions are not, that they're relevant to what you're studying, as well as not too sensitive information. It doesn't mean that you can never do that, but it's harder. You really look at it if you're asking people about painful experiences in their past and things like that. Then we really have to look at that, and that shouldn't be a student. Very rarely would you have, say, honor students do something like that. That would usually be a faculty that would be better. We would be happier seeing a faculty doing that kind of research, or staff. Disclosures about risks or procedures in case there are any risks that go along with it. If you're going to do, say, a survey at a high school, then we need to have a letter from the high school that says that that's, you can do that. If you are, say, coming from, maybe you're an adjunct here and you're coming from Sam Houston where you're a student, then we would like to see their IRB. We don't have a rule about ours has to be first or theirs has to be first, but we do want to know that they know you're doing it and approve of it. Recruiting subjects. We want to see the letters and things so that we can tell that it's not coercive. And where are you going to put these flyers? And what are you going to say in your flyers? Oh, and this is a new thing this year, the NOI IRB. This is Notice of Intent. And what this is, every president of every campus has to approve any research done on their campus. So we ask ahead of time that you fill out a brief, just a paragraph telling what you're going to study, and there's a representative on every campus that will, when we give you the form, will give you a list of who to contact, and they will help you negotiate with the president to get an okay. And they don't have to have a reason. The president can just say they don't feel like it. They can say, we've had too much research on this issue. I mean, occasionally, especially nowadays, people are very interested in community college students, and they really want to know what's good, what helps completion, what helps retention, what helps success, and so they are really getting studied. And we have a lot of people that want to study a lot of things, not just about our community college, but about others. And so it may sound strange, but it could be that they really are understudied. I talked to one IRB person in Dallas, and she said that sometimes they estimated that there were like 6 or 7 research experiments on each class by the time they got through with college. I mean, in the 2 years. And I mean, that doesn't mean experiment like, physical experiment, but still, they're studied a lot. And so we want to be sure that that the president knows what's going on their campus. And do not begin until you get our approval letter. It will all be an email, although we certainly send you a formal copy if you want in the mail. We do ask for about a month to do it after the final approval, after the final application is permitted, and is submitted. Usually it's at least 2 times that I go back and forth, because it comes to me and I'll look at it and I'll say, well, if you need to add this on here, or you didn't really answer this question as well as you could have, then I don't have any voting power. But I send it to Brian Schmatzke, who's the chair, and then he sends it through the process. Sometimes for very low impact and risk, we have a pretty quick process where he is the only one that looks at it. And for the next level up, we have Brian and one or two other faculty members look at it. And then for things that there's any controversy about, then we have a full board meeting with all of the members, and it has to be a quorum. There has to be at least a scientist and a non-scientist and a community member, all to make a decision. And that is the only way that you can be turned down. You can never be turned down just by me or by Brian. Well, you can't be turned down by me anyway, but you can't be turned down just by one person. You can only be turned down by the full board. And it's extremely rare for all campuses. Usually, I mean, for all IRBs, most people work with you to try to help you get the best, make your research as best as it can be. If you change your protocol, if you collect more data, if you change anything about it within the year, the IRB approval is good for a year. And if most of our research doesn't last longer than that at this campus that we've dealt with. But if it does last longer than a year, you need to ask for an extension. And that's usually pro forma if you haven't changed anything. If you have, then you just need to let us know and we have to look at it again. And then if you get any complaints, you have to tell them to me and I have to tell them to Health and Human Services. And then they do what they do. Sure it's not, we don't want that to happen. This is just, I'm not a FERPA expert by any means, but the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, you probably all heard about that anyway. That is what ORI does. ORI deals with whether or not they give you data that is protected under this act. But if we have a protocol and it looks like you're going to be asking for something that they may or may not want to give you, we usually just try to give you a heads up and say, you know, do you realize that if you ask for certain kinds of data, ORI is going to be less likely to give it to you. So we don't have any final say on it at all. They have the final say. And actually what they like to say is Brian Nelson has the final say. So it comes through legal. It isn't just them. So there's two kinds of FERPA information. Personal identifiable information, directory and non-directory. The directory is more basic contact information, place of birth, field of study, weight and height of athletes. As you can imagine, they do whatever they do with those. Those things can be, that kind of information you can usually get. The non-directory information that you have to get the student's permission to get this kind of information. Their grades or GPA, their test scores, their ethnic background, their social security number. And so if you come from outside the system and want to do research on our campus, we never give this non-directory information, is the policy, as I understand it. Research organizations and things like that, they may make they make a decision on, and I'm not sure what that always is, but in general, we don't give these kind of grades if you have no connection to, this kind of information if you have no connection to the campus. You're not teaching here, you're not a staff here. In-class projects, we kind of talked about this. If it's not shared outside the class, we don't need to see about it. But if you put it on your website, if it's part of research you're doing, if the student wants to do research, even if it's included with graduate school or employment applications, like part of a portfolio, then we need to vet it through our process. Honors projects usually do, if they're human subjects, they usually do need to go through us, and because they need to be presented on Honors Day. And we're working closely with the Honors program to help the students in the Honors program really be able to do research and to go through the IRB, but still hundreds of applications going to the IRB could be a problem. So we're working with them to figure out the best process for this so that the students learn how to do research and are able to learn about the IRB, which they are now incorporating in with some of the honors training. I believe they're going to start doing that, and so that will be helpful. But a lot of times honors projects do have to come through us because they'll present it on honors day, and then if they win, they go on beyond that. And the students need to take it, the 2 or 3 hour training also, along with the faculty. And we are asking that the faculty fill out the IRB rather than the student, or at least that the faculty has looked at it before they send it in, and sort of checked it over. We have in the past tried to, again, work with honors and say if several students are doing the same project and just put their names on it, and then, or if there's really minor differences in their project, then we can deal with that and put that on one IRB. We do like to get it early in the semester. In the past, I think that has been problematic, where sometimes people tried to get it in, but it didn't get in until late, and they weren't able to get it approved before the honors day. Not since I've been here that I know of, but it can happen. So what we're trying to do in the future is we're trying to become more visible like this with these trainings. We're hoping to make a video for our website that can do get across some of this information, and to put more information on IRB issues on our website. So for instance, now we have, if you're doing research with your students, there's a little white paper on that. You can look at it and it'll say, well, this is a good thing to do, or this is not such a good thing to do. And last but not least, here is our contact information. There's the website. If you just go on Lone Star and you put IRB up in the search, then it'll come up and you can get to our website. That's Brian's number, my number. I'm in the grants department at system office. If anybody, I urge you to call and ask any kind of questions that you have, and I really do try to help walk people through the process when we need it. And so, okay, are there any questions? I feel like I hope I didn't go too fast, but yes.
I have several. I'm on the Honors Council, so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to be here. And I was thinking back to a project that one of my students did several years ago, where she was interviewing several people about their experience in prison camps in Vietnam. And I didn't even think whether this was an issue or not, but should I have had that student go through IRB?
Well, and then it wasn't just an in-class, it was going for the Honors Council, for the Honors program thing. Yes, it should have. It should have technically.
So oral histories of any kind?
Yes, oral histories are, I know just from the research that I've done, there are some oral histories have a little, there's controversy over oral histories, because I know a lot of oral historians feel they have their own sense of ethics and they need to work that in. And we have dealt with that in at least one case since I've been here, where we said, okay, the rule is that you have to work with your students and be sure that they know what your ethics are, and then just incorporate that in. And we tried to do a group IRB, even though they're interviewing different people. But yes, technically it is. Oral history is, because it can be very positive. And I know there's a database it's across campuses, I think, of oral history database. But yeah, technically it should. Did you have another question?
I did. You were talking about how the process takes about a month. Usually the contracts are coming in around a month, then another month to get it approved, and then we're right on the time that it's over. And I know in the Honors Council, most of the time when students submit a contract asking to do something that with researching humans, most of the time when it's, you say, oh, this is an IRB thing, let's turn it down, let's direct them in a different direction. So we almost kind of.
See, we really don't want that to happen.
Okay.
I mean, I really don't want that to happen because it's so important that students do research and that research gets done. We really are trying to work with honors, and I just actually talked to Dr. Crusoe this morning about how we could compress the timing on that. And from what I understand, in some classes, it really can take 2 months for the students to decide they even want to be honors, or that it used to be able to do that. And so I would say a month is the outside. I would say when we see honors come in, we really do try to do it quickly. And also, honestly, this is, let's see, this is probably my second my second full semester as IRB administrator, and I know that it's growing a lot, and we're trying to figure out how much it's going to grow and how much that will affect how busy we get and how we can work with getting it all done in a month. And that's the last thing I would like to see is for people not to be doing research, because that's really exciting that they can get that here. Anybody else?
You got another one.
Should this be the thing that you go off to the side? Because I was thinking about some of them that some of the contracts that we've gotten in the past that we've said, I don't think. There was a nursing student that wanted to collect data from people that she was working with in nursing. We said, no, that doesn't even sound like we better go there. But there was another student that was interested in different methods of teaching a particular subject in high school and how that it affected their success in college.
Yeah.
And we said, well, I don't know. That was when we kind of turned to the side too and tried to direct them in a different way. But something like that would be okay to.
Yeah. Again, I don't vote on them. I send them up the chain. But I do think that, especially the second one, is the kind of thing that happens a lot. And then the first one even could be, if it's I guess it depends on the questions and that sort of thing. But I don't see why it couldn't happen. I guess one thing we just do say is that if it's students doing it, and it's a sensitive issue, they really need a lot of training. And I would probably freshman, first semester honor students or whatever, it's like if the issues can get more serious as time goes on because they learn more and they understand more.
One question I had about the informed consent.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things I told you briefly about is that with the knowledge survey, I'd really rather not know who took the survey and who didn't, because it's completely anonymous. There's nothing on the survey that would be able to indicate a particular student.
Okay.
Do I have to get their signatures, or can I just give them the informed consent and they can just decide what to do with it?
Well, if I'm, be sure I get this right, but when we talked earlier, it's, you want to see if change in knowledge has grown from the beginning of the class to the end of the class in the whole class.
Right.
By using group data in essence, but asking individuals and then seeing how many individuals here and here and percentages and things. That would be a good candidate for not having a signed IRB, but you do have to, actually I don't think we have a form on the website yet, but you do need to ask for that and explain why you want it, and then yeah. But you do have to hand them something so they've got it and,
right.
for official reasons, but yeah.
Because I mean, I thought about being able to go one-to-one correspondence to see if individual students improved, but I decided that really wasn't necessary. And plus, then
For some.
you have to deal with more how do you keep them protected.
Yes.
I didn't
Exactly.
see that there was a benefit to knowing individual students versus knowing the whole class population.
Exactly, and sometimes that's the kind of thing we'd say back to people is that if it doesn't matter to your research agenda and it will answer your question as well, why don't you try to use group data, and then you will get around a lot of questions that you might have asked. Like you could get group data from ORI about grades. You can get class data. I mean, you have to talk to Ori about it, but I mean, in general, it's easier to get them to say, on average, these were the grades in the class, than to try to follow the student through it. Sometimes it doesn't matter, and sometimes it does, to your research agenda. So, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great information. So we are gonna edit and put together
Okay.
a video